What's up guys, it's me, Coach Mills, and in this video we're going to be doing a DPS tier list in the new Season 4 meta. I wanted to wait a couple of days after to play a hefty amount of games on every single one of the roles, and I think I have a good idea of exactly what are the best and worst characters to play right now. So we're going to break down exactly what you should be grinding or avoiding, or grinding in spite of it being low on this list. You know how I feel. Every single character can get you to the highest ranks, but smash that like, subscribe if you enjoy the content, and let's get right into the video. Now, there are two major characters that I think are moving in position, and it really affects everything else. And these are really the only characters that I think their movement really matters, and it's Cassidy and Reinhardt. These characters, because they both receive nerfs, are overall weakening the power of certain compositions, which I'll get to in a little bit, and they are changing what are other characters that might see play and be opened up because these characters are falling down. Now, before we talk about how much that is and why that matters, let's talk about Cass, because this is where everything kind of stems from. Cass was far and away the best ranked DPS. He was just a freaking god with a huge amount of health pool, and he had a really strong grenade. And while he still has a really good grenade, he still can dink people, and he still has a fair amount of power level. It's not as far and away the best thing to be doing as it was before. This means that Cass is good, but not the best of the best. I would put him at the low A tier. I think he's still really solid, but he's not having a stranglehold over the meta, and especially because Ryan's a bit weaker, you can't force him nearly as much. I mean, you could still play him on good maps. Of course, we're going to go over that in our tank meta guide, and that's going to be in a couple of days. But overall, both of these characters kind of went together really well, so everything kind of pulls back a little bit, and we're putting Cassidy towards the bottom of A. Speaking of that, let's talk about Widowmaker. Now, Widowmaker is really strong. She's going to have, of course, polarized matchups. She's going to have some maps that she's amazing on, and some maps that she's not going to get as much value on. It really depends on the sightline. So every Sigma long-range poke map, Circle Royale, Junkertown, Havana, and Hollywood second, all these maps are going to be great for Widow. With the map pools opening up, I do think that there are some maps that are just kind of like slam dunks for Widow, and some maps that you can kind of take it or leave it. I think that every hit scan player, though, should be able to flex to Widow at the very least, and I do think that Widow is very strong. The higher in rank you go, the more dominant she becomes. There are characters that can keep her in check, characters like Wrecking Ball, characters like Sombra, but yeah, I'm putting her at the very top of A tier. It's going to look something like this by the time we're all said and done, but that's just a little bit of a spoiler for now. Now, let's jump to Sombra. Sombra's kind of strange, because while Sombra has historically been fairly weak, and I think that she's still not amazing, she does have some pretty good use cases. She's great at countering certain characters like Doom. She's really good at shutting down Hammonds, Wrecking Balls. Of course, really good Wrecking Balls can still play around you, but she is good at stopping those things. Plus, I think she's actually a good second DPS in a dive, because typically a dive is going to be centered around Tracer the majority of the time, and then that second DPS can be a lot of different things. I think that Sombra is really good in that slot, but besides that, Sombra does struggle, especially in ranked. I think that really she's only going to be fantastic if you're mastered at her, or you're playing her in the perfect situation. I'm going to put her at the top of C tier. Now, the next character that we got for you is Torb. And Torb is just kind of a super sleeper pick. I think he's really good as an anti-dive character, really great against characters like Tracer, actually decent at keeping some of these flyers in check, specifically Echo a bit better, and he's just going to be good with a lot of the tanks that see play. I mean, outside of dive tanks, I think he's great, and he can even be played with characters like D.Va if they play a more peel style. On high ground centric maps, he's going to struggle a bit, but I think he's like a really solid pick. And for ranked play, I think he's actually really great. I'm actually going to put him above Cassidy in the A tier. That's how highly I think of this character. I think he's really that good. Now, we got to move on to Echo, because Echo's a character that has actually increased in power level quite a bit. Cassidy was one of her hardest matchups before. He didn't even need a pocket to be like a true challenge to you. Now, he still can threaten you, but you can threaten him a lot easier now because he has less health and his grenade doesn't do as much damage. So if you sneak up on him, you're not going to just get killed by getting shot and stuck, and then you fly away and die. I think that Echo is actually pretty good right now. I'm going to put Echo in the B tier. I think that she's really close to the A tier. There's still too many powerful hit scans, Ashe with pockets, soldiers, and things like that for her to be truly unleashed. Still a really good pick, and I think a bit of a sleeper pick right now. Speaking of sleeper picks, we have Reaper. I think that this character is a little bit of a sleeper pick. I think he's actually strong in the right compositions. I think with any character that wants to emit a brawl at any time, Ramatra, Zarya, you could even play him with a Diva. Junker Queen's probably his best pick. I know Junker Queen's pretty weak in the meta, but on certain maps, you could definitely force a brawl with Reaper Junker Queen. I think it's really strong. The only true downside to Reaper, I think, is that you have to kind of play him with the Lucio. That's where he's best. And you don't see as much Lucio play at the higher ranks of play. There's a lot of supports that are super strong right now, and it's kind of hard to choose between all of them. And I think that Lucio is kind of fallen down from his grace. But still, I think that Reaper is a bit underrated. Still pretty powerful. He never really will die to a Hammond, so I think he's also good in the anti-dive in a lot of ways. And yeah, I think that a lot of people just underrate this character. I'm going to be doing a Reaper guide soon, and yeah, I kind of want to prove everyone wrong about this character because I think he's actually really good. It's just a little bit underrated. Now we're going to talk about Tracer. It's not really going to be that much of a surprise where I'm going to put Tracer. Everyone kind of knows where Tracer's at. Tracer's just the best. She's just the best thing that you could be doing. She's incredibly powerful. She's consistent. She's good at holding space. She's good at taking 1v1. She's good at diving in. There's just so many things that she can do. But the thing that you need to understand about Tracer is that she's hard. She's not easy. She is super hard. She might be the hardest character in the game to master, at the very least top 3. And that means that your value is going to go up like linearly to your skill on this character. There's not going to be any free wins on this character. You're never going to get free wins. Think about everything that can freaking threaten you. Everything in the game can one tap you. Ashe's headshots, Hanzo's can freaking headshot you. Damage boosted body shots can kill you. You can get freaking dogged on by Zen, dogged on by 2 shots on Ana, killed by freaking Kiriko. Freaking Brig now has her super shield that can stun you, and she's gonna play keep away. Every character in the game is out to get you, and still you are the best character in the game, but it's directly proportional to your skill. That's the thing. And of course, I'm gonna be making another updated advanced Tracer guide for a lot of you that really want to take your Tracer to the next level. But yeah, Tracer just slots into so many different compositions. She's fantastic right now. I think one of the linchpins of the meta, a very strong part, especially the ranked meta, is a good Tracer plus a Zen. Discording tanks and then being able to play in a safe position and constantly shoot a tank from an alternate angle behind them or to the side of them makes it so tanks just can't do anything. You mark dooms, you mark balls, you just mark characters, and you just make them hate themselves. Like, they just hate life. They can't do anything, and you just give your team such a huge advantage in the tank 1v1. I think it's so freaking strong, and I think it's like a route to a lot of really easy ranked wins. And then being able to learn when to mark certain things to prevent a dive or go and try to dive synergistically with your team. I mean, that's what Tracer's all about. And Tracer's just the best. She's at the very top. I'm putting her in the S tier. Speaking of S tier, we have Sojourn. And this one's going to be a little bit interesting, but I think that Sojourn is back on top. And this is a weird thing to say. This is weird because a lot of people thought that Sojourn's kind of time has fallen. We all knew that Sojourn was still really good, but didn't see as much play. But with Cassidy kind of becoming a bit weaker, especially in the head-to-head, Sojourn looks a lot better. And I think that really Sojourn, a lot of the community need to remove the idea that you have to play Sojourn with the pocket. I understand getting those one-shot headshots with the Mercy pocket is cool, right? But the utility that you're giving up by playing a Mercy, especially when we get to the highest ranks of play, you're giving up so much. Think about all the super powerful freaking supports right now. We got Kiriko, Zen, freaking Bap, Brig, On. I mean, there's just so much power. There's just so many good pieces of utility. And you can play Sojourn without a pocket. They do it in the pro scene all the time. And I think that one of the things that makes Sojourn so good is that Sojourn is versatile. You can play Sojourn in a poke. You can play Sojourn in a dive. You can play even Sojourn in a brawl. Like, you can play Sojourn in any composition in ranked. I think she's the most flexible DPS probably in the game right now. And that means that you should probably see her a lot. Now, I understand that this character is hard to learn and it's hard to extract the max value from. But one of the strongest characters in the game right now, and definitely one of the best DPS in the game right now. I'm putting her in the S tier, and I think that she really deserves it. Very strong. Don't sleep on Sojourn this season. Now let's talk about Pharah. Pharah is still in the B tier, but it's a little bit of a caveat because I think that Pharah can be even up to A on the right maps with the pocket. Of course, you're going to want to be playing this character with the pocket. I think that Echo, all in all, is going to be better without a pocket. But both these characters are definitely going to want a pocket. And I think that that's what makes these characters a bit weaker. If we look at them in the head-to-head compared to like Sojourn, right? Sojourn can be good without a pocket, while these characters really need it a lot more, especially Pharah. Sojourn doesn't really have any bad maps, while these characters do have a lot of bad maps. And I think that the biggest thing that you can just look at is, even if on some maps these characters are close in power level, it's about the amount you see of these characters, how dominant they are throughout the maps, that really matters. So yeah, I'm moving it like this, and I think this is pretty fair so far. Speaking of which, let's talk about Mei. And Mei's an interesting one because Mei was actually really strong before, really strong before, and she really played in the Brawl meta. And I think that the Brawl meta is still here. Like, we could still play Brawl, you could still play Ryan, you could still play Mei, you could still play Lucio, you could still play Bap, but something that has kind of happened is with some of the weakened states of characters like Cass and the weakened states of characters like Ryan, slightly weaker, there's more vulnerability. And there's other tanks that have kind of risen. Characters like Ramatra have risen to be better in the head-to-head from a value proposition when you're picking between Ryan and Ramatra. Now, Ramatra looks a bit better. And when we're looking at Cass, there's other DPS that look a bit better when you compare them in the head-to-head. Some of these small changes can really have a cascade effect. And as a result, Mei kind of got the short end of that stick a little bit, getting hurt relative to these characters. Now, I think she's still fantastic. I think she's still really strong, but I'm only going to put her at the bottom of A tier, a bit underneath Cassidy, because she's not nearly as flexible as Cassidy. But if you're playing any comp that has a front line up against another front line, you know, if you're playing any comp that is like Ryan v Ryan, Arissa, Ramatra, any of those, even if you randomly see a Hog, a Zarya, like, Mei's going to be really good, and she's also good against a Hammond. So yeah, I think that she's really strong. And for ranked in particular, I would say that she's actually probably way underplayed relative to how good she is. She doesn't see that much play in ranked, even though I think that if you have like a brain for the game, like you think about the game, not necessarily the mechanical skill, but the game sense aspect of the game, you can just carry on this character. Wall is one of the most powerful pieces of utility, period, and I would put her all the way up here. Now, let's talk about Soldier, because I think that Soldier is in a weird state. I think he's strong, but he's never really been meta. In pro play, we don't see him, and there's a reason for that. He's not a powerful character at the highest ends of what a character is capable of. So if we think about every character, we think about their value ceiling and their value floor. The value ceiling on Soldier, as everyone gets to the upper ends of mechanical skill and play, becomes a lot worse. But as we get to like no one really gets to those ceilings until even sometimes past ranked play, even like past GM1, past top 500. Because like if we look at this, Pharah sees like exponentially more play than Soldier, but if we look at a ranked meta, Soldier looks better. So like for a ranked meta, I would probably put Soldier just up here, you know, somewhere like right along these lines. But for a pro meta, he would be like really low, like down here or even down here, because he sees like almost no play. I still think that if we take the average of the two, we're going to put him at the top of B. I think he's still powerful. But yeah, I don't necessarily think that he is as strong when you fully master the character. Still really good. He's really flexible. So I think that in a lot of ways, he is a little bit like a worse Sojourn that has the same amount of flexibility, but still a powerful character that can definitely carry you to Grandmaster or above if you learn to master him and you learn good tracking aim. Now, let's talk about Hanzo, because Hanzo has kind of silently become good. It's weird. I think that Hanzo is about here. And the thing about Hanzo is that he's good against a lot of these brawl compositions, and he's really good in poke as well on a lot of the sniper maps. He can kind of keep widows in check and fight other characters, so he's good with the Sigma. He's good with the Ramatra. I think that the only thing that he kind of struggles with is up against dive. Hanzo doesn't have a lot of tools to stop dive. Now you can definitely outskill. Characters like Tracer, and you can definitely make a lot of plays with him no matter what composition you're with or what you're up against if you adopt your playstyle or adapt your playstyle. But he's really going to want to play more in these poke comps. So it's going to be kind of like Widow, but a bit more situational in some situations. So he's a bit like Widow, although he has more flexibility. It's not quite as much power level. I think he's still really good, and He's a great DPS to have if you're a projectile DPS player. I think that basically, if you're a projectile DPS player or a flex DPS player, you need to have Hanzo in your kit, because on some of these sniper maps, you can't whip out Mei, Echo, Pharah, even Torb, Genji, Junkrat. You can't play any of these characters on these sniper maps. Like, you need Hanzo. Like, if you're a projectile DPS player, you need him. That's the only character that you can play. So, yeah, I think that he deserves, you know, top of B. So, I think he's really strong. Now, let's talk about Junkrat. Junkrat. And, this one might get me a little bit of heat, because I don't think Junkrat is particularly good right now. I think that he's actually weaker than Reaper right now. I think he's even weaker than Sombra. Junkrat is a bit underpowered right now. I definitely think he still has a place, and you can definitely get him to work on the right map and the right choke point, but he's going to be more defensively sided. He's not going to be as consistent at trying to go for plays himself, especially after the mine combo nerf. And all in all, I think he has some really bad matchups too, with both tanks and DPS, and even supports. I'm going to put Junkrat at the bottom of C tier. I think that you could justify a buff to this character, make him a bit better, because right now he just seems kind of map specific, and that's kind of the way he's always been. Now, let's talk about Sim. Sim's another character that's a bit strange. She did see a little bit of pro play in Brawl, but for the most part, Sim is kind of a very strange character. She's versatile in the fact that you can play her both to deny space, putting the turrets around choke points and things like that to deny an enemy push, and you can be more proactive and go teleport in with your TP bombs and things like that. And I do think that Sim is like one of the best ranked grinders, kind of like Torb. Really, really strong. And if this was purely for ranked, I would probably put her up here. I would say for just, you know, a combination of the time she gets played in ranked and pro play, I'm going to put her at the bottom of A. I think she's actually a little bit slept on, and I think more than often she's going to see, she's just going to be able to work in a lot of different situations if you learn how to master her. So I'm putting her here. Genji. Now, this one's going to be another one that people probably won't be able to fully agree on here, I don't think. Genji is kind of bad. He's kind of bad. I've been playing him a little bit this season, and there was a lot of things that are hard to play around. Now, if you're a god at Genji, you can definitely make him work, and I think that Genji can work well with the dive composition, so for these reasons, I can't just completely cut him out. But he's just, you know, kind of the maybe the best of the worst is what I would call him. I'm going to put him at the top of C tier. This is what I'm going to put Genji. I think really the only time you're going to want to play this character is if the opponents are not running like mainly like Brig, Moira, Mei, Sim, any of the characters that are hard for you to challenge, and you're playing a dive comp. I mean, of course, Genji players are going to know when and where they can whip him out, but I would say if you're one-tricking Genji this season, good freaking luck. I just think there's a lot better options, and at the very least, Tracer is like so much better at doing everything that you would want to do on Genji that is just crazy. Yeah, I'm putting him at the C tier, and I think that he's just a bit better than these characters. Sombra, of course, has like more direct power in her good situations, but I think she's a bit weaker overall stat-wise. So yeah, I'm gonna put both of these in C tier. These are all playable, by the way, perfectly playable, just not anywhere near like the level of these characters up top. Bastion is kind of good in the right situation. He's kind of good. I mean, I think that he's still really easy to counter, but the trick is to whip him out in a very particular situation and get value with him. And I also think that he's one of the few ways to interact with certain tanks that kind of feel like you can't do anything about them. Nemesis form feels like you can't do anything about them. Hammond sometimes can feel like a nightmare. Zaryas that get high charge that just go in. And then, of course, Reinmir's. I think Bastion is okay. I actually think I slept on him a bit in the past. So, yeah, I'm going to put him at the bottom of B tier, I think. I'm going to put him here. I think this is fair. But only in the specific situations that you would normally play him. He's going to be very situational, but I think the power level is high enough to justify him here. You could make the argument that he maybe should be at the top of C. I'm going to put him here. I think it's okay. Ashe. Ashe is great. I would say that Ashe is honestly, we're going to put her up here. I don't think she deserves S with the other two, but Ashe is fantastic. With a pocket, without a pocket, super, super powerful. and just really capable of outputting a ton of consistent pressure. And I think that she's just really good. I think that she's really good in general, and I think that she actually plays well and against dive, plays well with a lot of poke compositions, plays well with even brawl compositions. She doesn't really have any bad maps. She doesn't really have any bad, like true bad matchups, maybe outside of Widow, but if you have a Pocky, you can make that up because you can one-shot her in the head. All in all, I think that this is a pretty fair tier list. I think that you could make the argument that perhaps Sombra deserves a higher placement. You can make the argument that maybe Bastion deserves a lower one. But for the most part, this is how I see the new DPS meta going forward. Definitely let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. And let me know what DPS you plan to grind this season. I'm really curious about it. But thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.